Hello. Thank you so much for joining us today. We seem to be having a few technical difficulties, so hopefully people who are maybe not able to get in here via the webinar link are joining us on Facebook, and I'm going to look to see how I can resend that out. So again, thank you so much. This will be recorded, so if you registered and missed out, we'll make sure that you get that. But my name is Anna Tony. I'm the Executive Director here at Leadership Toledo. Thank you for joining us once again for another session of our Community Leadership Series, so generously sponsored by the First Energy Foundation. We are very excited to have our presenter today, Sarah Skow. Sarah has a lot of pride for Toledo and gives a lot of her time and talent to making Toledo the best that it can be. So we're really excited to hear from her today about what it means to grow in your community in terms of service. So I'm gonna read a little bio here for Sarah, and then Sarah will let you take us away. So Sarah Skow is a lifelong Toledoan attorney and community volunteer. Sarah is a partner at Spengler Nathanson. In her civil trial and appellate practice, Sarah assists clients, individuals, businesses, political subdivisions, and nonprofits in the areas of complex business litigation, contract disputes, professional malpractice defense, tort litigation, civil rights, and employment matters. Sarah has been recognized by Ohio super lawyers as a rising star in civil litigation and in the Toledo Business Journal's Who's Who in Toledo area law. Throughout her career, Sarah has been involved in many professional organizations dedicated to enhancing and improving the practice of law, access to justice, and the legal profession. She has served multiple terms on the Ohio State Bar Association's Council of Delegates, is the second vice president of the Toledo Bar Association's Board of Directors, is a past president of the Toledo Women's Bar Association, and serves on the Board of Directors of the Ohio State Bar Foundation, the charitable arm of the Ohio State Bar. Outside of serving her clients and the legal profession, Sarah dedicates her energies and time to several Toledo area organizations, including the Arts Commission of Greater Toledo, past president, and Children's Theater Workshop, past president. She is one of the inaugural mentors in the Mom's House Sisters-in-Law Mentoring Program and is a member of the City of Toledo's Walbridge Park Advisory Board. For several years, Sarah has led a grassroots effort called Fight Homelessness, which has provided thousands of menstrual products, oh my goodness, menstrual products to those in need. Woo! Sarah's professional endeavors and community service have been recognized through her receipt of several awards, including the 2019 Citizen Appreciation Award from the Lucas County Sheriff, John Tharp, the 2018 WICA Milestones Award for Volunteerism, 2015 Toledo 20 Under 40 Award, 2015 Ohio State Bar Foundation Statewide Community Service Award for attorneys 40 and under, and the 2013 Toledo Bar Association Trustees Award. Oh my gosh, you are a busy, busy woman with a lot of talent and time. So thank you so much for joining us today, Sarah. I'm gonna let you take it over from here and tell us a little bit about what you're gonna talk to us about today.
Great, thanks very much, Anna.
For anyone who's watching, any questions that you have, please feel free to throw them in the chat and I will make sure that Sarah gets those.
Okay. All right. Thanks everyone for joining us here today, and thank you to Anna for the introduction and to Leadership Toledo for hosting this community engagement and leadership series. I'm here today and was asked to speak on how you can grow in a community and in your community. And so I'll give you the benefit here and share part of my experience growing in my communities here in the Toledo area and also in the state. And then just anecdotally share some thoughts about those experiences while also sharing and discussing some of the principles that have helped guide my community engagement and service. And then would appreciate hearing from any of you if you have questions or thoughts along the way. Growing in a community, I spent a lot of time thinking about the topic that I've been asked to discuss with you today. It really comes down to self-awareness, right? You're going to be asked in any number of ways to give of your valuable time. And what we've learned here within particularly the year of 2020 is that time is very precious. It's been a good reminder for that related to the pandemic, and that there are a lot of ways in which our time has been called upon, both before the pandemic and now through it and afterwards. So I think part of our discussion today will talk about the lens of what are you looking at now in the pandemic, and what will community service and engagement look like beyond the pandemic as well. So getting back to self-awareness, if you've been participating or going along with the Leadership Toledo series, a number of the presenters have challenged us to think about and discussed with us, what is your leadership style? What are your points of view? What are your passions? Because all of the combination of these essences of your self-awareness are really going to lead to decisions about how you want to be making time commitments. When we're talking about how to define community, what is your community? Does that mean your neighborhood? Does that mean your block? When you say, I want to be engaged in the community, or have that discussion with yourself, or raise your hand for volunteer purposes, what community are you looking to engage with? Because that could apply on any different micro or more macro level. So what does community mean to you? And how do you want to connect with your community or communities? It could be through church service or your place of worship. It could be through your children. And these lenses, in terms of your communities, will evolve as your life changes and as you continue to grow along. I've titled today presentation as Beyond Busy. The busy word is the B word that I've been trying to challenge myself about over the course of the last few years, related to intentional involvement. When someone asks, what have you been up to lately, or how have you been spending your time? I've found myself saying, oh, I've been pretty busy. That really gives short shrift, though, to what I've been doing, how I've been doing things, how I'm spending my time, and doesn't really convey the intentionality behind the service and the engagement. That doesn't mean that it has to be particularly deep, but the volunteerism at any level, from helping out at an event to reviewing some documents to being involved in a board in a more fiduciary role, those are all important volunteer positions that organizations and institutions and people rely on. And so I'm going to challenge folks today, as I challenge myself to do, to not use busy so easily as a shorthand, because I think it misses opportunities to share and to talk about, and to also bring attention to different needs that there are in the community, and different ways that people can connect through the community as well. So we'll talk about some of the differing levels of engagement and responsibility, and about intentional involvement and service. And then also too, leading to growth and personal growth, having some type of growth mindset through your service opportunities, because they say it takes up to 10,000 hours to master something. And are you working on, and how are you working on mastering your community involvement or practice? And what has that led to in terms of your personal development and growth, in addition to professional development and growth? So I am an English major at heart, and also from the University of Michigan, and really appreciate poetry and the power of language to convey thoughtful discussion and also introspection. And this is a quote from Mary Oliver's poem, A Summer's Day, and it really speaks to me about this topic of community engagement. So what is it that you plan to do with your one wild and precious life? Because your time does have a lot of meaning and value, both to you and to others. So how do you want to be sharing that time? How authentically are you participating within your communities and within your volunteering? Are you putting yourself out there? Are you challenging yourself to take on roles or to enter spaces where you might not have been present before? I mentioned community before, and this isn't meant necessarily to be endorsement of any one program or show, but I really enjoyed listening to the David Letterman interview of Dave Chappelle that's recently been available on Netflix. And part of what Dave Chappelle talks about is with his experience in terms of leaving New York and not being in LA, but returning to the community where he grew up or spent part of his childhood growing up, which is in Yellow Springs, Ohio, outside of the Dayton area. And if you haven't checked out the interview, I suggest that you do. And Dave Chappelle, rather simply and beautifully, I thought, describes the fact that he has a community there in Yellow Springs who aren't concerned necessarily with his celebrity and who know who he is, who know him maybe as a child and a teenager, but also who know his children and his wife and will see him in the store. And the picture there with Dave Letterman on the bench is where they've been walking around downtown Yellow Springs. And then the other photo with the lights shows the two of them in the more formal interview setting where he'd been putting on these concerts and shows in his neighbor's cornfield. And he talks about part of the reason that he had been doing these performances and these shows wasn't just for himself and for other comedians or performers, but because it was his way to contribute and to be able to use local community members to help people get jobs in the pandemic and after the pandemic. So I thought that was really powerful for me to see him talk about the importance of community to him and what's grounded him from a personal and also a professional standpoint. And it spoke to me in part. I grew up in Toledo in a period of time when folks talked a lot more about brain drain and opportunities that might exist outside of the city of Toledo, and that young professionals weren't coming back to the city of Toledo. And when I came, I lived in Chicago after undergrad for about a year and came back to Toledo to attend law school. And it's when I came back to Toledo in law school that I really started learning different ways that the community here in Northwest Ohio was accessible to me as a young adult that I hadn't appreciated as a teenager. Part of how I have thought about my self-awareness in terms of my community and how I'm trying to engage and give back is rooted in examples that my parents gave me. My parents would volunteer in terms of giving their time in the cafeteria at Old Orchard Elementary School, to coaching, to scout leader, to however they could contribute. And I also saw them chipping in and helping neighbors and participating in broader civic events as well, helping voters get registered and taking on various roles within the community outside of our family, but they engaged us as kids. And those lessons are invaluable. And also it continued into our experiences as a family. And the photo that I've shown here of the Civil Rights Memorial in Montgomery, Alabama by designer Maya Lin is of a Smithsonian magazine cover that I found in a stack of old magazines at my parents' house. And the reason that it's framed and in my office, which please excuse my cell phone capture there for you, is because we went to the Civil Rights Memorial on one of our family minivan vacations across the country. And this experience and going through the Civil Rights Memorial and also the South related to the Civil Rights Movement really grounded me in terms of wanting to help others access justice, and formed my young thoughts around equality, and it informs me today as an attorney as well. So a lot of my work, Anna was kind enough to share with you some of my professional experiences in service, and I also do access to justice volunteering related to board service with ABLE and Legal Aid of Western Ohio and the Toledo Bar Association's Pro Bono Advisory Board. And that's the outgrowth of that there, are from those experiences and watching my parents' example and in sharing together through those things. One of the legal profession titans who recently passed away, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, has this really powerful example of professionalism and what it means to be a professional and doing something outside of yourself to make life a little better for people less fortunate than you. And that's something, again, that's been ingrained for me as a child through my parents' example, was that a community really is judged and will be judged by how it treats its most vulnerable. So I take Justice Ginsburg's words to heart, and may her memory be a blessing. Outside of the legal profession, I have chosen to dedicate my time and service to the arts, and have done that in various ways. The way I got hooked as a young professional, though, was through attending some events that the Arts Commission had. And this was because I wasn't aware necessarily about the vibrant arts community that existed when I moved back to Toledo. And I had a friend who suggested I help out to volunteer at one of the Arts Commission's events, and I went along with her, and that led to a very rewarding board service, and also serving as the board president of the Arts Commission. But this is what and how it speaks to me. I personally find art enjoyable and fun, and think it raises community interest and dialogue. It reveals how a community and reflects how a community feels about itself and what the artists see in terms of opportunity, but also challenges along the way. And we can learn a lot from the musicians and poets and visual artists and glass artists and all of the vibrant artists and creatives who are in our Northwest Ohio community. And I have the website there for you, just as a plug in case you all want to learn all you can about the arts. And there are many arts organizations in the Toledo area that you can engage with from a volunteer level. Also, though, we very much need to be developing audiences and engagement experiences for folks. So there are lots of ways that you can get involved there. So that's a little bit about what my experience has been in terms of who I am, what has rooted and grounded me in terms of my service. And also too, I think part of this self-awareness is, what are you hoping to accomplish? I'm hoping to leave Toledo, as Anna said, a little better than I found it, and to help raise up others in the community to have the appreciation of their own for what our area has to offer. And also too, to make sure that the legal profession does what it can to improve access to justice and equality and equity under the law. So that is part of my self-awareness. But you all might hope to accomplish different things and might have different ways that you want to be engaged. So looking at how you define your community and what your talents are and what your talents are not, because you might be stretching in some of your service, as I have when I have decided to join the finance committee in a board. There's a joke that goes around that if you weren't good in math, then you went to law school as opposed to maybe medical school or becoming an architect or something like that. And I challenged myself to get deeper involved and get a deeper understanding of finance, because as part of your fiduciary obligations and board service, you need to know what is happening and what is the best interests of the finances that the organization has, and to be accountable for decisions that are being made related to those finances. And so that was one way in which I pushed myself and grew. And it wasn't always comfortable for me, and I didn't feel necessarily equipped with some of my background in those discussions, but I asked questions and learned from that and have grown, and it's helped me in a lot of ways. So what's your story? How are you looking to connect with our community? What is speaking to you in terms of how you want to be spending your valuable time? You've got so many ways that you can participate in our area that sometimes it can feel overwhelming. And that's why growth through service, I think, is really a fundamental component of where you can be focusing your energies. The photo there is a coffee mug that lives on my desk that was a gift to me from some friends when I decided to go to law school. And it reminds me that doing something, pushing your boundaries, and you're taking steps or risks that lead to further development is part of what some refer to as a growth mindset. Not being complacent and wanting to move forward through your intentional involvement. There are so many ways that you can be giving of your time and your talents. You can be a volunteer in terms of providing opportunities. Mobile Meals has volunteers that they rely on to get meals and also to have relationships and build relationships with their constituents and the clients who they serve. I've personally participated from time to time in Mobile Meals. You could be a coach. You could serve on a parent-teacher organization like my parents did. You could participate within the school or school carnival or cafeteria. There are many opportunities within professional organizations to serve, and those could be on a committee level. They could also be at a deeper board level for your engagement. And that means deeper just in terms of the commitment and also to the expectations, because each one of these volunteer and community engagement opportunities is really important, right? But the board position is a fiduciary role. And so there are legal implications and responsibilities that are tied in with that type of fiduciary position, because you are then officially taking on responsibility to act in the best interests of the organization. And so that's what I mean about deeper. It's not that the experience necessarily is deeper, because I've had very rewarding experiences through doing mentorship or the volunteering with mobile meals example that I gave before, but it hasn't been where I have been obligated as a board member to act in an official capacity in a fiduciary role for that organization. But that's with the board membership. That too leads to various levels of engagement, because we have lots of nonprofits here in Northwest Ohio. We have hundreds, if not thousands of them, where you could engage in any level. But when you take on the board position, knowing how sophisticated is the organization, what does the organization expect from me, beyond the nuts and bolts of how many years would a board term be for a position, what are the expectations in terms of your work and your participation, because some boards are more working boards and have you doing as a board member more of what would be considered maybe extensions of staff work, because they're a smaller organization and they rely on their volunteers to execute their services, to deliver on their mission, and to move conversations forward. There are certainly other boards that are more strategic or advisory even. And so to get a sense of what's the right fit for you, do you want to be on a board where it's more about the doing with rolling up your sleeves and getting a facility ready, or developing policies and procedures along the way? Or are you interested in informing the capital campaign that's needed? And these are all really, I think, important questions to be asking yourself and to ask yourself along the way to make sure that you are re-engaging with organizations once you made the commitment. And I think I'll pause there. Anna, I've seen the notification about some of the chat. I don't know if there are questions that folks have.
So, and I think you might be talking about this. Raina says she's having difficulty finding ways to serve the community during COVID-19. It seemed easier to find organizations doing work pre-COVID. How is everyone adapting during this time? Are there any unique opportunities to serve that anyone can share? So I think, Sarah, you can maybe speak to that. And I think if anyone else in the chat wants to, give Raina some ideas as well.
Sure, and we'll touch on this a little bit more too, Raina. But I think COVID-19 and the pandemic has caused a lot of organizations to have to regroup, to adapt, to take time to see what is their model, what have they been doing that's tried and true. And I don't know that there is one generalized way to respond to your question. I think there are folks who are really interested in volunteering right now. I've heard, similar to your question, I've seen friends of mine post on Facebook, or some have even reached out to me directly and said, how do you think I could be volunteering? I'm really compelled to volunteer right now, but I'm not sure where to start. We have in the Toledo area, I think Leadership Toledo is certainly an organization that identifies opportunities for service and engagement and volunteerism. The Center for Nonprofit Resources might also be able to guide you into different areas. Sometimes they share volunteer opportunities and other organizations. You might put up something on social media if you're on social media and say, does anyone know about volunteer opportunities? I will say that there are mutual aid groups that are available through social media. There's a Toledo Mutual Aid network that's up there, and it might not be that hands-on volunteering is something that you're comfortable with, or that a lot of organizations have a need for these days, but you might be able to identify some opportunities where you could volunteer your time in a socially distanced way, and do something more hands-on. There are also maybe opportunities where if they have policies and procedures or archived documents that they need to go through, or things like that, where you can be looking at virtual ways that you can connect. Each organization is going to be in need of board members, and those who might seek a board opportunity. Board service has mostly gone online. And there are ways to connect through Zoom meetings or GoToMeeting or whatever your preferred platform is, and engage with people about leading the discussions and talking about how to adapt and what organizations are going to need to do going forward, even post-COVID. And so that's another great way I think you can participate, is through board service right now. Anna, I think I see some more flashing. So are there follow-up?
People are just kind of commenting on like different opportunities, like United Way is always looking for volunteers. There are a lot of drives going on that organizations have. Nikki from Cherry Street is saying that Cherry Street Mission is truly struggling to serve meals because of the lack of volunteers. And we also have seen that Sunshine Communities has been looking for virtual volunteers.
Great. So see, just by asking the question, and with community-minded folks, which I have found that Northwest Ohio is full of, people who want to contribute and want to give back to their neighbors. So I think just asking around for what those opportunities might be are great ways. You could do, Metro Parks has volunteers that help with their trails. And other opportunities that could have you outside. So the city of Toledo too has boards and commissions that you could look into through the city's website to see if you'd like to be involved in something that might be in your neighborhood or in one of your interest areas. That's how I'm on the Walbridge Park Advisory Board, is through those opportunities. You know, I think looking at these experiences and figuring out, where do you want to be present? How do you want to be present? And the importance of presence is really something I think, once you've made a commitment of time, whether that's an hour or two for a shift at an event, or maybe helping to stock shelves in a local food pantry, whatever that might be, that you're focused and present when you're there for your volunteer opportunity. And that too is about the boardroom. Putting away the number of tabs on your screen when you're in the Zoom meeting right now for some of your board service. And I know that's easier said than done, and people like to feel that they're multitasking. And it could even be that you are trying to look something up related to the organization itself. But being focused and being present is so important, both in terms of showing others that you care and that you are focused on the needs of the organization, group, or person who you're helping, and presence. I can't emphasize enough how much we could all learn to reassess how we're being present and when we're being present with technology challenges today. Leading with curiosity, asking the questions. And you know, there are so many times where I have heard, well, we've always done it that way, or this is the way we've done things, or this is the way that the organization operates, or, you know, we haven't tried anything different. And asking questions in a constructive way to generate discussion or thought or ideas. What's the point? You know, why are you there? All of this relates to presence and building your presence within leadership positions, I think really happens when you are in service and doing something outside of what you get paid to do. And there are aspects of presence, from candor to clarity, to openness, self-confidence, thoughtfulness, warmth and empathy, the power that can be displayed through empathy. Also to constructive dialogue, the power of not just presence, but thoughtful discussion, questions that show you've read the materials that were sent to you in advance of your volunteer shift, that you're there and ready to go, and that you want to be part of the process or the experience. Those are all important things to think about when you're talking about presence. And how are you displaying your passion or interest? And people hear the word passion, and I think they jump to, well, I don't know how passionate I am about learning what to do with the board bylaws. And I understand that those can be challenging and sometimes feel slightly dry or maybe even mundane, but recognizing that if you're around a board table and looking at bylaws, you must be interested in the organization in some way. And the bylaws should govern how your board participates and what's expected of your board, and looking at it from a different perspective and angle might make it seem like less daunting of a task for you. So you might not need to be passionate about bylaws or board governance even necessarily, but passion really is about the expression of commitment or your motivation, in my experience. And so to think about that, what's motivating you to be there. The sincerity of your participation, I think, also plays into this idea of presence and is an aspect of presence. And that goes to, why are you there? And what's the point of you participating in this? And sometimes the point of my participation has been because my friend asked me to. There are any number of volunteer opportunities that I've taken on, some from the event, or helping organize a closet, or participating in a drive, or even donating money. I've done it because a friend asked, or an acquaintance asked, someone asked, and I responded. And I have some friends where we tend to volunteer together on things because that's how we spend time together. And that has become part of our relationship and friendship. And so that might be not the sole point, but part of the motivation for your participation. Grit is something we hear discussed a lot these days. And grit and having the ability to evolve and persevere in a sustained way is really what I mean when I think of grit and refer to grit. And this is also about initiating tough conversations. And there are a lot of tough conversations today in the space of diversity, equity, inclusion, and access that should be taking place and that are taking place within organizations themselves, and that people are having as well. And these conversations might certainly feel challenging or uncomfortable, but having the conversation is important. Initiating the tough conversation is important. Raina and others mentioning what to do now in terms of COVID-19, looking at budgets and forecasts and saying, what should we be doing with staff? Where are we going in terms of finances? How should we be fundraising? And I've mentioned fundraising a couple of times, and that's tough. And that's tough for nonprofits and organizations right now, to look at how they are sustaining themselves financially. There are a lot of nonprofits that might not have had COVID-19 pandemic fund access. For whatever reason, they might not have been able to access grants or other funding or loans that have been available throughout the pandemic. And so when you see someone sharing something, or in terms of a GoFundMe or some type of web-based fundraising platform, or asking if you can contribute and that every dollar matters, you know, that every dollar does matter right now to a lot of these organizations and their health, and what may or may not happen with their mission or delivery of services going forward. So, and those aren't easy conversations to have, and those aren't easy asks to make externally on behalf of an organization, because that once you're involved in a deeper board level or even a committee level, you have both an external and an internal relationship with the organization, in terms of an ambassador role or a fiduciary role and obligations related to that with board service. So initiating tough conversations, participating in tough conversations, and keeping those ongoing. As I mentioned before, I see that part of grit is sustained persistence there, with those conversations and that reflection, because grit and resilience are really, I think, tied together. And part of resiliency, I think, is reflecting and taking time to reflect. I'm on a board right now where we are going through this cycle related to board nominations, and asking people who have been on the board, would you like to renew? Are you wanting to renew? And I hope that the people who are getting the questions and the notifications are thinking about what their role has been and what they want their engagement level to be with the organization, because that's part of resilience. And resiliency is this introspection and to re-examine along the way what your participation is going to be and how you're going to be doing things going forward. The perspective piece that I find really important is empathy. That doesn't always get mentioned or discussed, but having the ability, not necessarily to agree, but to empathize with somewhere someone is coming from or what someone expresses related to their experience, I think is a good call and reminder for us all about the power and impact that empathy can have in terms of team building and leadership. Because you don't always have to be the leader, you don't always have to be the person who raises your hand or offers an idea or a suggestion. And that has been really an area of personal growth for me, is for taking the time to listen and to empathize and to learn why others are around the board table when we're talking about committee level engagement or board level engagement, and even with volunteer positions. Why has someone taken 2 hours out of their day to join you on this activity? And you learn a lot more by listening than certainly you do by talking. And part of the things that I've learned and experience is that people are looking for fulfillment often in volunteer experience. They might also be looking to advance their careers or to meet friends and others in their community who they think might have a shared value system or set. And some people are looking for a way to have fun and to enjoy themselves. And I think you can when you find the right opportunities, figure out what speaks to you, you can have those aspects of enjoyment and fulfillment and even fun with community engagement and service. And I remember early on in my career, I had someone say to me that volunteering is really just a way for people to get you to work for free. And certainly there is the work aspect to volunteering in any capacity, but there's a lot of opportunity, I think, for fulfillment and satisfaction and relationship building. And that also means too that not every opportunity is going to be a good fit for you. And there are certainly times in our lives where you might be approached or asked to join a board or to dedicate your time to a project or an initiative, and you might not have the time. And being honest about that, saying no, I don't have the capacity right now, or this isn't the right time for me, I think it is helpful for you and for the organization or the individual who might need help. So I'll pause there for a second and Anna, see if there are any questions folks have or comments.
No questions, but I was actually just typing a comment and I was saying, as an executive director, the best thing an individual who doesn't have the time to commit is to tell me they don't have the time. I won't be offended. You know, I might be disappointed because I want someone's what they have to offer, but I would much rather have someone be honest with me and with themselves that they don't have the time or the ability to commit at this time. And it doesn't always necessarily mean that you won't ever have that time, but in this, you know, at this juncture, it's not there. So this is all really great stuff, Sarah. Thank you.
Sure. And I think that's a really good point, Anna. And it's a collective, you know, community service. It's a team activity, right? And so we're not isolated in silos, even today in the virtual way that people are engaging. And, you know, everyone with an oar in the water is important to activate the mission and to do what's in the best interests of the organization, or to make sure that someone's getting the meal delivery that they wanted, or that the parks are an enjoyable space for people in your neighborhood. And so there are any number of ways that recognizing where and when can you be contributing your time, and what do you want to be contributing your time to? Because if something doesn't speak to you anymore, it's going to show in terms of your service. It's going to show in terms of how you're showing up, when you're showing up, how you're paying attention, if you're responsive. And that's something that's noticed not just by executive directors and staff, but also to the people who you're going to be engaging with, or the constituencies that the organization serve. So take that into account, because part of the self-awareness piece that's really important, I think, and that's getting beyond busy, right? Because we want to be mindful, we want to be thoughtful, we want to be intentional with how we're participating and where we are. And that means if something no longer is working with your schedule, with your life, with your professional career, to say, I'm sorry, this isn't working for me. In whatever way that you can convey that, and to say, I think a lesser role is what I could do right now. Or please keep me in mind for future opportunities, because that's important too. At the organizational level, where people are, where organizations are only as successful as the people who are around the table and who they're serving in terms of the missions. With Raina's question earlier about COVID-19, with some of the friends who have, I've seen, been looking for opportunities for engagement in community service, you know, the Mr. Rogers look for the helpers is a good way to identify maybe some opportunities for you if you have some friends or colleagues who are in your sphere who you understand are engaged with the community in various ways. Ask them what opportunities might be available. See what they're doing and how they are helping others, because there are so many ways and opportunities in the area. And right now in COVID-19, you might just not know. And the organization might not know how exactly to respond or engage its volunteers, but they might find a way to engage you that no one was expecting. And I give this example. I am the past president of the organization Children's Theater Workshop. And I'm involved in Children's Theater Workshop and have been volunteering with Children's Theater Workshop for over 10 years now. And the reason that I'm involved with CTW is because I participated in this program as a kid, and it really helped me develop my voice. It helped me appreciate the role of storytelling, to share and find senses of commonality. And it also speaks to my artistic interests. The 65th season for Children's Theater Workshop was 2018 to 2019. So that shows you all of the things that CTW was able to do and was doing within that 65th season. And the other picture is how we learned, and under the leadership of our executive artistic director, Amy Reed, and our staff, had to quickly adapt and found ways to take our programming online to help kids and teens have artistic experiences, creative expression through theater in Zoom calls and meetings, and even did Zoom plays and productions and performances. And it's been scary and concerning, and not always knowing what may or may not work, but taking the risks, thinking through what we might need to do, listening to the input, guidance, and expertise of others around the table has really helped inform our way to move forward. And it's hard to try not to overthink things, and thinking and thinking and thinking without acting. Sometimes I think looking at the organization to see, what are you afraid of? Is this a fear response because we haven't taken a certain action? And in COVID-19, a lot of organizations have had to act rather quickly and might not have had the opportunity to think through things maybe as thoroughly as they would have before, but needing to respond and being in survival mode has led to a lot of creativity. And I'm particularly proud of what CTW has done in response to COVID-19. So there's my not shameless plug for Children's Theater Workshop. But there are a lot of organizations who have been experiencing similar development and response in the wake of COVID-19 and the pandemic. Virtual board service, again, is something that we touched on. Making leadership decisions about how to best address the pandemic for the organization, staff, constituencies, and communities. And this also includes volunteers, by the way. So if you're volunteering for an organization, you're spending your time, providing your feedback is really important so that that service and experience can be improved upon and honed along the way. Just a few suggestions there about how you can be engaged in your community in different ways. You know, just checking on your neighbors next door, seeing who might need what in terms of a trip to the grocery store or from the pharmacy. That's really important right now. Virtual and telephonic social interaction and volunteering is another great way to get engaged in the community. And then again, as mentioned in the comments, online donations of various goods, services, and again, financial support is really important during this period of time, as it always is. Here's just a list in closing of different resources where you could find different opportunities related to volunteering, board service, community engagement. Within professional organizations, that could be something like Rotary, that could be something like Zonta, that could be in terms of service organizations and clubs, the Links, or any number of other opportunities that could be identified in various professional, I think, fraternities, alumni groups, different professional associations. The Toledo Bar Association has volunteer opportunities that it shares with its members too. And then Engage Toledo has a City of Toledo Ambassador program that you may or may not be interested in. Epic Toledo does a great job, and they often partner with Alley Sterling Philanthropy on identifying different opportunities that might exist for volunteering, and also providing some competencies for board service, again, for board governance. And I'll mention that the Center for Nonprofit Resources, I think they had something up within the last day or so about board governance resources that they have as well. And one I'll mention that's not on the list here is, if you're looking into board service or are already involved in board service, it's good to go back and look at the basics of your fiduciary role. And that's just part of doing the introspection of, why am I doing this and how am I participating, kind of the self-check on that. And the Ohio Attorney General's office has a nice resource through its charitable organizations group with explaining the fiduciary role and nature of board service. And so that's essentially my thoughts on how to grow in a community, is really to get engaged in any type of volunteer opportunity that speaks to you, to connect with your neighbors, to learn more about what shapes our community, what industries and business development are happening within the community, and what resources our community and our neighbors are looking for to make this an excellent, livable, and meaningful shared experience here in Northwest Ohio. Does anyone have any questions?
It doesn't look like we have any questions right now. We'll give people a minute though, but I think, Sarah, you really bring up a lot of good points of just, there's so many. I think sometimes people can get overwhelmed with what service is, right? And they think, oh,
Right.
well, I don't have this skill, or I don't have this money, or I don't have, and sometimes it's really just about breaking it down into something really, really basic, because we all have skills, we all have talents, and finding where they can be put to use is
Right.
an important part. And I also really encourage people, if you're not quite sure where it is, like when it comes to, serving on a board, if you're not quite sure where you want to serve, then just go out and volunteer some places and maybe try a committee or something like that, or do something with an organization that you can kind of like test the waters out a little bit. But at Leadership Toledo, we're all about community engagement. And so we really want people to learn about their community. And I think to be a leader in your community, you have to know your community. And so going out and really taking the time to explore what motivates you and what fuels you is really important. So we've got a couple comments just saying that, thank you, really great. Thank you for this information. It's a really important topic. So I appreciate everyone's time. Sarah, thank you so much. We are so lucky to have you here. And I was jotting some notes down, and we were just saying that there's some really, we're going to be talking with our youth tomorrow about service. And we're taking down some notes about some things that you said today that we can share with them. So for everyone who joined us, I'm so sorry about the technical difficulty in the beginning there. Whew, not sure what happened, but Thank you for joining us. In the chat, there is an evaluation, if you can please fill this out. Our next community leadership series is with Dr. Christy Jenkins from the Family Child Abuse Center. She is on Wednesday, December 2nd, and she'll be talking about how to serve in your community. So please join us on that date. And if you have any other questions for us, feel free to reach out to us, reach out to Sarah. Again, Sarah, thank you so much. And we will see you all in a couple weeks. Have a wonderful Thanksgiving and stay safe, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Stay safe, stay well.